I'm going to briefly show, for those that aren't familiar with what we do, I'm going to briefly show a video that tells the story. Christmas morning, December 25th, this video hit 2,500 news desks across the country. And by Christmas afternoon, beloved automotive photojournalist Dano Patten was killed by illegal street racers while videotaping an illegal street race, essentially for the purposes of promoting illegal street racing. Keep that in mind. Keep in mind the tremendous irony of a man being killed videotaping street racing the same day we released this video. Have that as the backdrop as you watch 4 minutes of our latest anti-street racing video that we released Christmas Day.
This is Aaron Schwartzbart, driver of MotorGospel Ministries John 316 race car, and I'm excited today to be here at Buttonwillow Raceway Park for MotorGospel Ministries anti-street racing outreach event. The mayor of La Mirada has a street racing problem, and Mayor John Lewis is demonstrating to his constituents that he's a man of action by coming here and driving at triple-digit speeds in bumper-to-bumper traffic to demonstrate to the people of La Mirada that there is a right time and a right place for motorsports.
We have local street racers from around the area. They come over and they take over our intersections and they race down our main street. It's a big public safety issue in our streets.
There is a right time and a right place for motorsports, and that is not in the streets of La Mirada.
We need to show people how dangerous street racing is for not only the driver, but also for the passengers, as well as the people that stand by and watch this.
He's coming here to Buttonwillow Raceway Park to drive in MotorGospel Ministries anti-street racing educational activity.
MotorGospel Ministries is here to show us how dangerous the street racing can be.
We'll be instructing him just as we would instruct any young person that's been arrested for street racing and sentenced by the courts to community service with MotorGospel Ministries.
Aaron Schwartzbart has gone through many of these programs with people that have been sentenced to public service.
Along with Mayor John Lewis will be the debut of Haley Nobles. Haley Nobles is a 17-year-old young lady who got community service for a speed-related infraction. Court sentences young people to come to the track with us.
I ended up at MotorGospel because I got a speeding ticket as the sign changed into a construction zone.
Her mom moved the family to California.
We got connected with MotorGospel, and it ended up being a great connection because we were able to do some community service, and it introduced us to something completely different.
So Haley is doing her community service with MotorGospel Ministries behind the wheel of a cop car here at the track in our anti-street racing outreach event.
Part of it is about the turn that you're in. Part of it is about the turn that's coming up. This is, by the way, the most difficult track.
I feel like my experience here has been different from other community service because I've actually had a good time.
Give a dash, put the car on the right. Point, point, point. Left. There. You're doing great, Haley. Very proud of you.
As a mom, it's always hard to let your kids do something that seems risky, but really I felt like she was in really good hands. She was safe, she was protected.
It's not worth it. It's not worth speeding out on the roads and risking getting arrested or putting yourself and others in danger.
We've had our new friends out there. They're definitely getting to experience that there's a little more to this racing stuff than meets the eye.
The safe way to do it is coming out to this track and doing it in a way where they have safety precautions to keep everyone safe.
Let's get started without further ado.
Thank you first for inviting me to this panel. It's a great opportunity to get the message out. And as you see, I was in that first part of that video, and making that video was one of the funnest things I've ever done. You know, getting to drive that fast without having a cop car behind me is one of the dreams of my life when I was 16 years old. So, but all kidding aside, as the mayor of La Mirada, the problem we do have is public safety issues with regard to street racing and the drifting that goes on. As you saw parts of that video, you see there was a lot of crashes and street racing and drifting going on. And La Mirada, I'm sure, along with I know the surrounding cities and probably a lot of the ones that you guys live in that are on this panel, you know, you see a lot of the racers, you hear them at night, you know, and being the mayor of La Mirada, it's interesting that as soon as you hear the uncorked, you know, Fast and Furious type vehicles racing down the street between 1 and 4 a.m., I'm on Nextdoor quite a bit, so I'm getting emails at 2 a.m. saying, "Mr. Mayor, what are you going to do about it?" Like, well, it's 2 a.m. You might want to call 911, or you know, you might want to call the police. They'll get there about, you know, a little faster than I can. But you know, the problem is first of all, it's a public safety issue. You know, we have you know, people and children, you know, crossing the streets, and you know, they're going so fast they may not be able to slow down. And we've had a lot of accidents based on street racing, and we've had a lot of what looks like some of you are police officers, what they call the takeovers of the intersection. So they take over and then they do the donuts. And then, as you were referring to earlier, they had the one videographer was killed not too long ago doing that type of stuff. So we have a big issue here, and one of the things that I have been doing is the anti-racing campaign here to try and curb some of that. But some of the problems that we have is we only have X number of police officers in our city at a given time. So, you know, when they take over the intersections with 300 people, you only have maybe 2 or 3 officers that can respond, and 2 or 3 officers are not going to take on 300 people. They're just going to try and disperse the crowd. So trying to, you know, get some vehicles impounded and trying to make some arrests is probably not going to happen. So they just know nothing's going to happen. So it's a lot of task force is what I'm trying to get together in this general area. Aaron had referred me to the OTS, Office of Traffic Safety, to try and get some grants, and we've actually applied for those to do a couple things, is to try and maybe throw together a task force if we can with some extra funding to try and shut these guys down. We also, I think some of the video you showed there, Aaron, is when you came and filmed the city council meeting. That was actually a study session. We're studying ordinances in La Mirada to see if we can actually impound the vehicle for more than 30 days, which is the California state ordinance at this point. But we're looking at hopefully impounding it permanently, as well as putting in, you know, very heavy fines, which is hopefully going to be a deterrent for some of this street racing. So that's something that's pending as well. But one of the other things I think is to have street racing days off the streets, and that's to try and get MotorGospel Ministries to have certain, maybe every quarter or something, we can go to Irwindale or go to Buttonwillow, and you know, we could sponsor a few of these kids that do go racing down the streets with some of the OTS money, and we can just say, hey, if you want to go race at Buttonwillow, go race at Irwindale. You know, don't take it on the streets. It's a public safety issue. People are going to get killed. You know, the second thing is that we just spent $28 million resurfacing all of our streets. So when you come and you take over a street, they leave probably, you know, 20 pounds of rubber with a giant donut in the middle of your intersection. And, you know, that doesn't go away for a very long time. And sometimes when the asphalt's not compacted correctly, it's taking chunks out of the asphalt of our nicely paved, you know, intersections and streets. So, you know, as the mayor, you know, we're trying different aspects to try and take on the anti-racing issue. It's try and take it off the streets and try and give them an alternative. And, you know, and then the other issue is the ordinances to take away their vehicle and to hit them with some pretty heavy fines. So, you know, we give them the carrot and the stick, and you get to pick which one it is. Is it going to be the carrot or is it going to be the stick? So we'll leave it up to them. But I want to thank Aaron for, again, inviting me onto this panel and letting me drive his cop car at 120 miles an hour.
You're most welcome, and thank you for your support. Hopefully we're going to save some lives together. If you can, I'd say this to you and any of the panelists, if you can stay around for Q&A for a while, I would appreciate it. If you have to jump off after your 5 minutes, no hard feelings whatsoever. Do what you got to do. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Oh, and by the way, shameless plug, February 13th, I think it is, John Lewis is going to be driving at Willow Springs International Raceway, again in the cop car at triple-digit speeds and bumper-to-bumper traffic. If any of y'all want to come out and join him for some controlled automotive mayhem in a legal environment that's much, much safer than the street. At the racetrack, we have crowd control. At the racetrack, we have ambulances with jaws of life and fire crews and all that stuff. At the racetrack, we have $2 million in death and dismemberment insurance in case something goes awry. You know, come and join us there if you feel the need for speed, and you can watch Mayor Lewis in action behind the wheel of Motor Gospel Ministries cop car. There was one gentleman in particular that was on a very tight schedule. Is Grayson Suman on the line anywhere?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, good, excellent. Let's jump to Grayson. I'm aware that you're on a pretty tight schedule and you're in a different time zone. One of the things that I think is particularly interesting, each of these racers panel discussions that I've held over the past 5 years has had a little bit different of a flavor. When we held the first one, there was no Motor Gospel Youth Center. We didn't have the anti-street racing simulator that Councilmember Lee was instrumental in obtaining for the youth center. We didn't have the cadet race team car. We didn't have our after-school auto shop club. A whole lot of things have come out of these panel discussions that have been very valuable. But each discussion has had a little bit different of a flavor depending on what was the current event or events related to illegal street racing. And this one is no exception. As I was telling you, Dano, this beloved figure in the automotive world, was tragically struck and killed by illegal street racers while he was videotaping illegal street racing, pretty much ostensibly promoting illegal street racing. And one of the things that I think bears discussion, that's why Grayson Suman is here, is that at the track we have like $2 million in death and dismemberment insurance in case anything goes wrong. We have crowd control. We have tech inspection so the cars are not unsafe and stuff like that. When I'm coming into a turn one at Fontana, on my budget, I'm doing 158 miles an hour in the John 316 race car. I'm running over top of drivers that are just as good as me that can only afford to go 125 miles an hour. I'm getting passed by a privileged few that are not any better drivers than I that are going in excess of 200 miles an hour on their budget, which includes wind tunnel testing and tire warmers and all kinds of exotic stuff. 50 cars are slamming into a turn together in bumper-to-bumper traffic with speeds ranging from 125 to over 200 miles an hour. You can be sure that stuff happens in that kind of situation. You don't blame the driver if something happens at 200 miles an hour faster than he or she can react to it, or if a tire blows, or if a tie rod breaks or something like that. Stuff happens. But the one you would blame is the promoter that sets up such a venue without proper crowd control and puts 100 pedestrians right at the end of turn one, so that if something goes wrong without K-rails or fencing or anything, one of the cars goes flying into the traffic and kills a bunch of people. So to that end, in light of Dano's tragic death, and we are going to have Dano's brother and Dano's niece talking a little bit later. To that end, I was particularly interested to have a representative, a motorsports professional of sorts. He's an insurance agent. There are maybe two insurance companies in the whole world that take the kind of risk that it takes to put $2 million of death and dismemberment insurance on a pack of cars that are going in bumper-to-bumper traffic at 125 to 200 miles an hour. So I particularly wanted him to address this because the people who organized the illegal street race that killed this friend of ours, they didn't have this insurance in place. They may be facing some consequences that would better be borne by K&K insurance professionals in dealing with this kind of the financial consequences of this kind of situation. So, Grayson, if you would give us a brief introduction about yourself, and then talk about 5 minutes on anything that you think is relevant here.
Thanks, Aaron. Like you said, I work for K&K Insurance, and I am a commercial underwriter for them. I've been in insurance for about 15 years, and I've been a commercial underwriter for about 6 or 7. And yeah, we are one of the few out there that are willing to write coverage for this. And we've been around for about 66 years. We actually were the first company that really got into motorsports. actually what's grown K&K to what it is today. But yeah, I mean, since we've been around 66 years, we've been able to figure out, ways to mitigate and ways to help tracks try to do, the right thing. Obviously, like you said, things can happen. Things are going to happen when you're racing like that. But, we have figured out different rules and different structures of the tracks to try to make sure to alleviate those. And if something does happen, you make sure that, you got the stuff in place to at least mitigate injury and damage. So, when you got a hold of me, you told me, kind of what you wanted me to talk about was, comparisons between street racing and racing legitimately on the track. And, it's a hard thing. Really, the only thing that's similar between the two is that you get to go fast and you get a heck of an adrenaline buzz while you're doing it. But, that's really where it ends. One, you have all the safety precautions, all the insurance that's going to protect you. And, on the other side, I mean, you're all on your own. If something happens, it's going to all come down on you. I'm not going to go ahead and list all the issues, that come along with street racing, as, you probably already know. And I know a lot of these other guys will probably talk about today. But, more what I'm going to talk about is the protections that you are afforded when you are racing at a track. For one, the track, and to even be able to get track insurance through us, they have to be able to meet our underwriting guidelines. So, they got to make sure that their safety is up to our standards. First off, a lot of it goes into the setup of the track. You got to make sure, you got the proper protections in all the areas, and you got to make sure that you're protecting all the spectators that are there, with catch fencing and things like that. The other thing you kind of mentioned, we make sure that you have certain rules for certain classes in place to try to help. You obviously have to have all the proper safety equipment, and then there's all the teching that goes into it to make sure that everything is in place properly there as well. And then you mentioned it once again, there's fire and EMT that we require to be on site as well, because like you said, things happen, and you want to make sure that you got the safety crew there to be able to get in there and try to stabilize somebody, while the ambulance is on the way, to be able to get them to the hospital. So you're afforded a lot of these things, on the safety side, but then the other side of it comes in is insurance. So the track or the promoter or the association that's putting on the events or the races, they're going to be able to provide you with liability coverage. So, if something is to happen, and it does happen, say a tire goes into the stands or something and somebody is injured, when you're on the track, you're going to have some liability coverage there that's going to help protect you, and, help, bring in lawyers and go through all that and help pay out if there are injuries to somebody. And then the other thing that comes in, and it's just like you were talking about earlier, is your accident coverage. So there's excess medical and accidental death and dismemberment that comes with that. So, if you are injured and either don't have insurance or your insurance will not cover it because of the activity that you're going through, there's a lot of them out there that, they don't really like it when you're out there racing. So what happens is, depending on what amount that they have at the track, we'll be able to provide some money going towards your medical care. And then, the accidental death and dismemberment, kind of easy to understand what that is. If you do pass away or something, to that nature, there is some money that can help go to your family and help out with that as well. So, that the track can provide that coverage for you, but we actually have other coverages that are for the race teams or the racers themselves. We have what's called an owners and sponsors policy for when teams are going out and racing. Now it's almost like an excess policy. It kind of goes above and beyond what the track would be providing. And what that would do is it extends liability coverage. So if there is a major incident that goes through their $1 million or the $2 million in liability they have, you would be able to have some additional coverage there as well. And then we can actually protect vehicles, your vehicle, your towing vehicle, the trailer, all of your tools and equipment that are associated with your racing. We can protect those as well. Now, obviously, we can extend the coverage while you're racing the vehicle. It is more, like we said, off track and storage. It's for, when you have it at your house and when it's stored, and when you are taking it to the track. Now, it has to be a non-licensed road vehicle for it to fit in that. So it's more when you're really getting serious into racing. But it's really nice to be able to do that, because a lot of the times, in a lot of scenarios, if you have a fire at your storage location and it burns up, your commercial policy or your homeowner's policy is going to try to get out of it, because it is a racing competition vehicle. And actually, I've had a lot of cases that I've heard where, even if you have tools and equipment that aren't associated with it, if they're in the same area that you had your race vehicle, they can actually deny the claim for those as well. So, that's kind of my whole spiel on it. As you can see, there's multiple levels of protection that you are afforded, by going and doing it legitimately at the track.
Good. Now, ordinarily, I was hoping for us to get through the panelists before there's Q&A, but I know you're in a different time zone and you can't stay. So let's make an exception. And does anybody have questions for Grayson before he has to sign off? I'm not sure if I need to unmute you, or if you can raise your hand, or if you can unmute yourselves.
Yes, I have a question.
Okay, please go.
So would a traditional auto insurance company or policy cover a driver involved in illegal street racing that results in someone's death or traffic collision?
See, if it's something along those lines, it's not necessary that they 100% won't, but when you're doing activities like that and you're going outside of the normal, what they're looking to cover, they are gonna do what they can to deny that claim.
Thank you.
I have a question. I didn't think about this, but it's not just a matter of having the insurance in place. It's the fact that you won't even insure a track that doesn't have the proper safety precautions. So it's a little bit of a vetting process. Just the fact that they can get insurance is suggestive of a certain level of diligence and attention to safety on the part of the track. Otherwise, you wouldn't insure them. So the fact that they have insurance is almost a little bit of like inspection, almost like a tech inspection for the track, the crowd control, all that stuff. You're not going to insure somebody that's unsafe, even if they have a big sign that makes them look like a legitimate track.
Yeah, definitely. I can't speak for some of our competitors. They're not quite as strict as we are on when it comes to track assessments.
Yeah.
But we actually go out every 3 years and go to each track that we have and make sure to do a relook over the track. And, we'll make sure if there is any trends that we see and claims that have happened, we try to point those out and try to continue to improve the safety of the facilities.
Good. That's a little bit of a seal of approval. I never thought about that. The other question is, I never thought about the photographers. Does your insurance protect photographers that are legally doing their job at a racetrack?
So yeah, when the photographer's there, so our participant accident coverage that I explained, basically what it states is when somebody is in the restricted area, which is normally the pits or whatever, and they have a designated duty, then they are to be basically looked at as the drivers or the any of the people that are there with the driver. So anybody that's in a designated area that has a designated duty inside of the restricted areas is on that participant act.
Got you. Thank you for that. Any other questions for Grayson before he has to sign off? All right. Thank you so much, sir. Feel free to stay on as long as you want. Really appreciate your valuable contributions to the dialogue. I will, by the way, if anybody's interested, I can give out, if anybody's interested and anybody's willing, I will give out contact information for anybody on this in case you all should want to continue the dialogue on down the road offline or whatever like that. I'm inclined to have Matt Hernandez go next, but let me ask, is there anybody else that is on a tight schedule such that you'd like to get out of here in a hurry? We'll accommodate that if so. All right, Matt, spend a minute or two introducing yourself and then talk about whatever you want to related to this topic.
Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Matthew Hernandez. I work for Councilmember John Lee. My title there is Public Safety Deputy. So with that, I'm the communities and council members liaison to LAPD Fire Department and various other public safety departments. But with my day-to-day job, I handle constituent phone calls that come to the office regarding potential reports of speed or street racing. Street racing is very prevalent in areas. I see a LAPD officer here, so like Devonshire Division is very prevalent. I know same thing over there in Foothill and other parts of the San Fernando Valley. Our streets in the San Fernando Valley are very wide, and some are even secluded from the rest of the city. So if you go on the street and let's say middle of a normal LA day, I know maybe not during the pandemic, but you see a wide open street, the next red light is 2 miles away. A kid in a brand new car is gonna, have a little left foot. That's understandable as I get calls from constituents. So my job is to relay those reports, gather those reports, get more details, and work with our Valley Traffic Unit. I also come in contact with our anti-street racing task force to gather that information and mitigate. To be honest, mitigate a call. Most calls are, "Hey, they're street racing. Oh, do you see them? No, I hear them though." So it's like, come on, I need more details. I need more assistance to help me help you more, which is totally fine. That's also my job, is to educate the public. So with all these calls, the council members made it very kind of one of his goals, policy goals, as he's in office, to assist LAPD, whether it's with funding or to use a organization just like Aaron's to help mitigate whether it's offenses or other drivers from doing this, especially in our area in the San Fernando Valley. So one thing we did, my boss historically, if any of you know him, he has ways of finding funding within the city. We actually allocated a couple grand to help Aaron out to purchase this. What's the title, Aaron? It's a
anti-street racing
simulator.
Yeah,
there you go. I've seen it. It's pretty cool. Not pretty cool. It's amazing. A machine. It's very sensitive, just like driving. So I think that's a great alternative to community service. Just like in the video, the girl there said it's fun. I think that's fun too. Who wouldn't want to go do that? So we're proud to help Aaron. We're proud to promote him because there's more ways than one we can help battle an issue, and it's all about collaboration. Whether it's LAPD, city, constituents, organizations, there's a bunch of different ways. And another thing is we fund a lot of overtime funding specifically for Valley Traffic Unit. We have given funding to our anti-street racing task force straight from our office to work areas such as Devonshire Division and Topanga Division. It gets some too. You got to spread it out a little bit. So that's my role. And sometimes I do work with CHP. I know over there in West Valley Division, I contact directly with Weston Haver, the PIO there. But I'm always happy to do that. My family's all CHP. My friends are LAPD. So, I got the best of both worlds and blowing up my phone every time. So that's my, I'm open for Q&A. I do have to go to another board meeting. But I'm open for Q&A. I still have some time.
So yeah, let's do the Q&A with Matt right now since he has to run.
Easy crowd.
Okay, I'll ask a question then if nobody else is going to. one of the things that irritates me on behalf of John, this may be controversial, but I believe it's objective and true and heartfelt. John is a tremendously humble servant. And John, this is Councilmember Lee I'm speaking of, John Lee. He's a humble servant. He's a strong leader. He's given and given and given in this community for several decades, long before he had a public office. You know, there are two kinds of people that end up elected. Some of them are politicians that just want a title, and then some of them are just folks that have been helping out for all their life, and they weren't even seeking a title, but they get kind of self-identified. They get recognized for their service to the community. And John Lee is such a man. He's been helping for decades, and yet I hear people get mad at him saying he should do this, that, and the other on you know, stuff that they want him to do that would take budgets that are absurd. Accidents go up, fatalities go up when the roads are wet. So maybe John should be in charge of putting umbrellas over every street in CD 12, you know, a $2 billion umbrella program, so no piece of asphalt would ever get wet again, no matter what the weather does. It's absurd. It's ridiculous, obviously, but it's, you know, it's to make a point. Can you give any kind of practical guideline as to what, you know, what can he do and what can't he do when people are calling saying John Lee doesn't do anything about street racing? Can he hire 300 more cops and post them all at one intersection where we always have takeovers? That's exaggerated, obviously, but you know,
Yeah.
What are his limitations? What if you wanted people to understand, you know, how strongly I feel that he's doing the best he can with what he has to work with? What kind of numbers can you give to people to give them that perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was an exaggeration here. I have gotten the request, believe it or not. But you know what he can do is you know, use our funding straight from Council District 12, and kind of appoint me in charge of that funding to work with the Valley Traffic Captain, to go over details and what funding, what amount of funding would get, you know, how many hours that would get us in our district, and the captain would work with me. He always says, Captain Nyman sits down with me, says, okay, Matt, like what calls are you getting? What areas are your constituents calling about? You know, and the fact that I have to sit down with the captain, which is always why I come back to the constituents and say, did you see them? Is it organized? How many? I need those specific details in order to make adequate suggestions to the captain for these certain overtime details that we're providing for the LAPD. So numbers wise, you know, I'm not too keen on operations, but I know that, you know, we can get 2 motor officers, let's say, I'm just going to throw out a street, Cessnon and Reseda intersection, which is, you know, a real street, a real intersection where I get calls from. But, you know, let's say we have a certain amount of funding that'll give us 12 hours for 1 week at this intersection. That is something that's very feasible for council member to do. That is something very easy to do. He's been doing it. He's going to continue doing it as long as he's in office. And you know, honestly, when constituents hear that and when they see that, they do get very happy, which is great. You know, but what we do is not just for them to see; it's for them to know that, you know, the council member does talk the talk, does know that it's important to him and his constituents, and he's willing to put, you know, the funding into it. He's willing to work with our public safety partners to address issues. You know, it's funny, like I always bring up to constituents when they want a lot of PD presence. One of my very first calls being in this office, this constituent asked for an LPD officer to sit at this intersection from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. because of traffic going on in his neighborhood. I request that from Valley Traffic. Valley Traffic grants it. A week later, he says, "Hey, I got a speeding citation." You know, and I'm like, "Well, do you want the officer there or do you not?"
Right.
You know, which is also part of my job. You know, to mitigate on the hours, the specific resources that is needed in certain areas. So there's a lot of collaboration going on, not only with funding hours, but with, you know, the needs of the public.
Other questions before Matt has to run to his next meeting?
No, but I just want to concur. I feel for you. People ask me the same thing. They want to set, 2 deputies down at the takeover intersections for 2 hours at a time doing nothing. It's not going to happen, because then they'll see them there and then they won't stop, and then there'll be a waste of time.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, thank you, sir, and give our gratitude to the council member for his wonderful life-saving support of our programs.
I'll do that, Aaron. I'll be on for a few minutes. I'll drop my email in the chat so everyone has access to it.
Please, thank you so much. Let's shift gears a little bit. Russ, are you willing to talk for a few? Russ Patten? Okay. Let me see if I can unmute you. Ask to unmute. I think you may have to press the button to unmute. There you go. Give a little bit of introduction about who you are, and then spend about 5 minutes, giving us your perspective on all this.
Yeah, I'm just joining in. I missed everything. I had a problem, but my name Russ Patten. I've lived in California over half my life. My brother got me out here, and my brother was recently killed on Christmas Day filming a street race in Carson. And, it's been a month and still trying to get over it. I don't know what else to say.
Oh, that's all right. You don't need to say anything else if you don't want to. We're appreciative that you're here with us. If there's anything that comes out of this dialogue that's useful to you, if we can help you in any way, please let us know, or contact any of the others that are on here if they can help you in any way.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not a cop or an attorney, at the risk of stating the obvious. So there are details that are ongoing with the tragic death of Dano, both in terms of criminal investigations and presumably civil litigation. And we're not talking about any of those details here. I don't know any of the details anyhow, but we're not talking about anything specific here. Thank you so much for joining us. If you have questions or comments or anything, don't hesitate to chime in or raise your hand or whatever.
Okay.
Okay. One of the things that we talked about was, that at the illegal street race that killed Russ's brother, there was no crowd control, there was no insurance, there were no safety crews standing by with Jaws of Life and Fire X and things like that, that might have made a difference. Sometimes at the track, people die on the spot and nothing can be done. But sometimes at the track, the fact that we have a safety crew, 15 seconds away from the crash site versus calling 911 and it taking 5 or 10 minutes or more for somebody to get to the site, that makes a big difference. And so to that end, I'm really glad to introduce my friend Craig, in whose hands I've been putting my life. Those of us, many motorsports professionals, have entrusted our life to Craig. If you would unmute, please, and introduce yourself and talk for 5 minutes about anything you want to discuss relevant to this topic. Or do I need to?
I should be unmuted.
Okay, yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Aaron, for putting this on. I own a private company. It's a private fire rescue business, and we go to most of the racetracks in 6 Western states and provide emergency medical and fire rescue services. As the gentleman from K&K said earlier tonight, they have checklists and forms. Well, before any of these drivers, including Aaron, can get onto the racetrack, we have to do a cursory check of all the functionability of safety, from the start-finish line to the finish line, to the paddock. We have to check availability of hospitals and what's going on, especially in these times of COVID, who's available, where they're coming from. If we need a helicopter, do we have it available? We have to make sure that these racers get all of the medical and fire related stuff available to them at a moment's notice. We literally sit in a fire truck at a staging area, engine idling. We're ready to go when the radio says we have a problem. All these drivers that come to us have state-of-the-art safety devices, state-of-the-art roll cages, state-of-the-art fire systems, but sometimes it's just not enough. What Aaron's done for everybody through the outreach program and bringing these kids to the racetrack opens their eyes up to a new version of street racing, we'll call it. Now they can get on a track and under guidance and observation of an instructor type, they can learn how to operate that car under control. And what Aaron said, turn one Fontana, 200 miles to 125 miles an hour, all it takes is one person to check up and my day begins. A good day is for the fire truck, the ambulance, and the wrecker vehicle not to move. And that doesn't happen when you're on the city street all the time. Something happens on the city street, someone's got to call 911. Bunch of questions are asked. Computers are run, programming is done, engine companies are sent, ambulances are sent, police are sent. When it happens at the racetrack, it happens right in front of us. And so many times it hasn't finished playing out when we're on the move. So as Aaron does this and brings more and more people to the racetrack, I hope they see the avenue of safety that this provides them to get them off the street. And Aaron knows this, and many people understand that there is a cost to going to a racetrack. And, you know, this is where with Aaron's groups, you know, and people helping out, they can mitigate some of that cost for these kids to come out and bring a car out for a half a day or a full day and just have a good time and learn the trade of driving a car. Go ahead, Aaron.
Okay, thank you so much. Keep up the great work. If you can stay around a while, we'll save the Q&A for after. Are you all right time-wise?
Yep, I'm good.
Okay, great. Then let's shift gears a little bit. I see Officer Rodrigo on here that I know from Irwindale and other places. California Highway Patrol, we have a few different agencies represented here. And you probably have stuff to discuss with you, or your colleagues probably have stuff to discuss with Mayor Lewis, because part of what he's dealing with in La Mirada is relatively small law enforcement jurisdiction. But I think there's probably a lot of dialogue to be had between his officers and officers from other agencies and other jurisdictions and stuff. So you and Mayor Lewis are probably going to get to know each other before too terribly long. But in any case, briefly introduce yourself and talk for 5 minutes about whatever you feel like discussing relevant to this topic.
Wonderful. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Aaron, for having us here.
Thank you.
This is just a testament of your desire to keep teens and adults, for that matter, everybody safe. Mr. Patten, sorry for your brother's loss. I know that could be difficult, and unfortunately, that just goes to prove that it's not just teenagers that could get hurt or killed by illegal activities such as street racing. With the California Highway Patrol, I'll let Officer Baldonado, when he gets his moment, talk about it a little bit more, but we do have a grant. If you saw in the chat box there, we do have Miss Nicole Suna from the Office of Traffic Safety. So Mayor Lewis, she left her information, I believe, on there. If not, then you could, I'll leave my information on the chat as well. And Officer Baldonado, Christian Baldonado, left his information on there as far as the grants. Now, we do have grants, and like I said, I'll let Officer Baldonado touch a little bit more on that. that we would be able to assist you. With the California Highway Patrol, we are a state agency, and we are always looking forward to helping out our partners, whether it be with the police department or sheriffs, state, county, city. We are always wanting and willing to participate. As for my role, I do public relations. I'm the PIO. Mr. Hernandez, like Wes Haver is for West Valley, I'm the PIO for the Baldwin Park area. And I'm very fortunate because I am very much a racing enthusiast, not a street racing enthusiast. And I do attend Irwindale, which is right in my backyard at work, both professionally as an officer. That's where I had the privilege of meeting Aaron and having several conversations with him and the different guests that show up there. And a lot of times people will approach us and ask us, what is it that you guys are doing here? And we have a different message, but at the end of the day, it's always a traffic safety message. And I always tell people, when, if you quote me, like, we encourage people to drive fast, really, really fast, but on a racetrack, because that's the place to do it. You have your safety measures, you have your barriers there. Just as a gentleman before me was mentioning, something happens, they're right there going to help you out right away instead of running away because they're afraid of being arrested or being questioned. So it's always a great opportunity to be out in public. I am also in charge of doing the social media for my station in Baldwin Park. If you guys care to give me a promotion, you guys can start following me, CHP Baldwin Park. Just kidding, I won't give you a promotion. So you guys check it out. When the quarantine first began, we started getting a lot of street racers on one of our mountains, Glendora Ridge Road and Glendora Mountain Road, SR 39, very popular. They filmed Fast and Furious 3, Tokyo Drift there, so the teens know that that's a popular spot for these switchbacks and hairpin turns and everything. And unfortunately, especially during the summertime, but because of the virus and the stay-at-home order, people were going up the mountain to drive fast, and they had their car meets up there. We are very much aware of this problem. And yes, teens do crash, or I'll call them street racers or speed enthusiasts crash and unfortunately kill and injure themselves at an alarming rate, to be quite honest. This year has been 2020 was pretty brutal when it comes to those statistics. And so what we ended up doing is we do have a task force for the department, but we do have officers from my station that we were every day sending up there, and we're doing social media posts of some of the arrests that we were having up there. And, we were getting a lot of, I wouldn't say negative feedback, but from, these car groups basically cussing us out, getting mad because we're up there, stopping their fun. And so I would have a sidebar conversation with them with a direct message, and I would encourage them. I'm like, hey, Irwindale opens up, I'll go race you. Not in my police car because that's slow. I'll go race you in a personal car. And, it was always like, they would start talking, pardon my French, they would talk crap at first. And then after, they'll see like, I'm being genuine, like, I will race you. I will, in my personal car. And they ask me like, oh, what kind of car do you have? This and that. I'm like, well, it's faster than your car. So then you just kind of had a banter back and forth. And at the end, they were accepting my challenge, but we're still waiting for Irwindale to open up to the general public for that. But we're always, I see that we have members from the LAPD here. We have Mayor Lewis and others. Mr. Hernandez, please feel free to contact us. Let us know. We're here to help you guys out. As soon as I'm done yapping, I'll go ahead and include my information right there. Aaron, we still have to do a track day.
Yes.
I'll have to get out. All right.
Yes.
So we'll keep it at that.
It sounds wonderful. I look forward to it.
Open for questions afterwards.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Stay around. Thank you so much. Bill Cotter is on a bit of a schedule. So Bill, if you would introduce yourself briefly and talk about anything you want to for 5 minutes.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. I'm Bill Cotter, a volunteer out of LAPD Devonshire. I guess I've been volunteering there since 1992, so hence the gray hair. Most of the career I had with the LAPD was inside. About 9 years ago, they let us start going out in the street, responding to traffic accidents. things along that line. And it's a real eye opener, and it's something I'd really like to try to find a way to get the word out to the young people that you may think you're immortal, but from the number of bodies and accidents and fatalities I've been at, you're not. And they don't seem to think about what it's like for their parents. There was one day about 14 months ago, I had to deal with 3 fatalities in one day. And when the father walks up and he said, my son didn't get home. He was coming home with his brand new motorcycle and never made it home. And I heard it was a motorcycle accident on Citizen. Is it my son? And we have to tell him we cannot identify the body. We cannot identify the motorcycle because it hit the wall so hard. You know, I can't tell you. Then you leave there, you're just getting back to the station. A call comes out for another fatality. 3 guys in a car from this Valencia area drove around a turn at high speed, went under a trash truck and killed 2 of them. And then you've got to give the message to their parents when they show up as well. And I don't think these kids realize, you know, they're not immortal. I mean, I like speed. You know, I have a high performance airplane, so I try to enjoy that.
Wow.
You know, I've had, you know, my share of Mustangs that I've always look into my rearview mirror to make sure I'm not getting pulled over. But I don't think a lot of these kids realize what the danger that they're taking. And we had one about it just about 12 months ago, and I'm just testifying in the lawsuit for it. We were out doing radar enforcement. We were driving from one point to another, had the radar gun in the back seat of the car, and said, gee, this guy's really coming. I wish I had the radar gun out. And the light changed and he accelerated to make the light. Didn't make the light, hit another car, flipped about 3 to 4 times as he rolled past me. When we looked at the video later to analyze it, he was going 104 miles an hour on Rinaldi at Reseda at 11 o'clock in the morning. I jumped out of the car, had to call an RA for him. You know, he was kind of bloody and as a mess, you can imagine. Well, he lost his spleen. He's got neurological injuries for the rest of his life. And he's also now got one hell of a lawsuit against him and his parents for the girl that he hit who was trying to make a left-hand turn. And a lot of these people don't realize, you know, you're going to hurt yourself. Your parents, the look on their face when you have to tell them their kid is dead is horrific. But your parents can also lose their house. They can lose everything they own in paying off this stuff. And so the street takeovers are bad enough. And my condolences go out to the fellow who lost his brother. We had a street photographer hit Balboa and Rinaldi about 3 months ago, about 2 miles from my house. Luckily, that wasn't as bad, but you know, it had all the potential for it. But it's not just the street races, the takeovers, and the rest of it. It's these idiots that sit at a light, rev the engine, and off they go. Or and the kid who lost his spleen, he was in a hurry to get to college. He didn't want to be late for class. So 105 miles an hour in the 40 zone. So we're trying to work, and you know, it's great with Matt Hernandez on the phone. We're trying to work with him. You know, Aaron and I were on a call with Valley Traffic, and we're trying to work. I was on another call about that today, trying to see what we can do to tamper down some of the intersection takeovers. But if anybody has a way to try to get the message out to the young kids that you may think you're immortal, but you're not. And even if you don't care about what happens to you, man, give a thought to what happens to your parents. I mean, trying to tell some mom that her kid is never going to come home again, and you don't want to walk over and see the body because, oh, the head's not attached. I mean, it's horrific. And I don't know how to get that message to people, and any help that we can do to do that. The impact on the survivors is just horrific. So appreciate your time and giving me a chance to, you know, speak, because it's a real important thing to me. I've known some people killed, and you know, the impact they have on their families, that they never get over it. It's really tough.
Thank you so much, Bill. Oh, you got to run. So any quick Q&A for Bill?
Again, if anybody knows of, again, I'm in the San Fernando Valley, Devonshire station. We're trying to work together, and the mayor mentioned that he has the issue. You can't put 2 officers at intersections for hours, because as soon as they, if somebody pulls up, they'll see them there, they'll leave, or people will complain you're not taking care of my other calls. One of the things we're trying to do with Valley Traffic is to work to put volunteers and unmarked cars at the major intersections where we have intersection takeovers. So as the cars start accumulating, we can start alerting Valley Traffic to go and participate with us. We're also talking to Mission Division about doing the same thing. So if you have civilians that you have to go through an LAPD vetting procedure and make sure you get to do it, but there's ways citizens can help in this sort of thing to work with the traffic officers to say, hey, of the 6 intersections that are the most common ones, you don't need to be at all 6. We'll be at all 6, and as they start showing up, we'll let you know. So again, if people want to get in touch with me about that, we're working with Valley Traffic. Again, appreciate Aaron being on the call with the captain last week. I had another call with him today, and we're moving firmly ahead with our plans, Aaron.
Good, good. Please keep me in the loop on that. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I'm lucky. I don't live near one of the intersections that gets hit too bad, but boy, the emails sure fly the moment they start.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Keep up the great work, Bill. Detective Castillo, if you can unmute. I had a particular reason that I wanted Moses Castillo to talk, although I would encourage you to speak about whatever you want to. But to some extent, Detective Castillo is representing both law enforcement and the legal process. One of the things that I feel strongly about, to the point that I was making about, you don't blame the drivers if 50 cars are going 125 to 200 miles an hour, slamming in the same turn together. It's not the driver's fault if stuff happens, at least not necessarily, but it is the fault of the promoter if they would put innocent bystanders in a grandstand without crowd control, without K-rails and such, right at the end of that straight where that pack of cars is trying to get into that turn. So I was particularly interested to have somebody who works in the civil legal system to talk a little bit about the potential for civil consequences, wrongful death suits, et cetera, from people who organize an illegal street race without proper crowd control, without insurance, without ambulances and jaws of life, et cetera. So with that, Detective Castillo, if you'd briefly introduce yourself, feel free to talk about anything you want, but I was particularly excited to have you because in some ways you touch on both cops and law, civil law, right?
Yes. Well, thank you, Pastor Aaron. And, I appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to speak. I will tell you this. I have 3 boys myself, 23, 20, 21, and 15, soon to be 15. And I taught them early on that the vehicle that you're driving is a deadly weapon. And you got to respect it as such. So I heard you talking about how we could reach out to the youth. I'm hoping that maybe you can make some connections with the school districts, whether it's in LA or Orange County or wherever, that would allow you in to speak at maybe, once, I know right now everybody's Zooming, but once we go back to school, or even now, do a Zoom conference with some of these youth, some of these students, and highlight your program and what the goal is to save lives. So I did see your program actually highlighted on Fox 11, I want to say about a month or 2 ago, somewhere around there. So now to be contacted by you to be able to speak, I really appreciate it. So, and my last 2 years of LAPD, after almost 30 years of service, was at Central Traffic Division. So, I did see a lot of tragedy. Obviously, street racing is illegal to begin with, and oftentimes we get those hit and runs when somebody gets struck, and then these suspects flee, and now it's a whodunit. And so, yeah, get the word out, the dangers, the crimes involved, and one of the things that we've been advocating on for our law firm in recent months, or actually ever since George Gascon took office, is victims' rights. And one of the things that Gascon has done he has eliminated the special enhancements of great bodily injury. So what that is sad, because I had a case where a mother lost her unborn child as a result of somebody speeding down the street in a tow truck, driving a tow truck over 60 miles an hour in a 30-mile-per-hour zone, collided with this vehicle that had the mother and her unborn child, and this child did not survive. And now Gascon wants to do away with this GBI, great bodily injury, and this case now is in limbo because of this. It might be jeopardy to actually get dismissed altogether. So our law firm, the Tertullian Law Group, has been very active in representing victims and their families as Marcy's law attorneys. So every victim in the state of California has Marcy's Bill of Rights, and that's certain rights afforded to the victims of crime. So if anybody knows of anybody that needs this kind of assistance, where we are doing this pro bono at no cost, the only thing is we ask is that family would have to reach out to us. So those of you that are still active in law enforcement and investigating these crimes, if you know of any families that are impacted by these directives, reach out to us. I'll be more than happy to. We've teamed up with at least 12 other attorneys who are former prosecutors who we've teamed up together to fight against these directives. And I know we don't want to make this a political thing, so I'm not, but I'm just speaking facts. That these directives, so these directives are, being implemented. They are impacting victims, and we're here to advocate for them. And obviously, we do also do personal injury, and if anybody needs any help or resources with that as well, we'll help those victims as well. So that's my 2 cents. And again, I do appreciate Pastor for you reaching out to me, and whatever we can do moving forward, please let us know.
Thank you so much. Is it safe to say that the organizers of an illegal street race that had inadequate or non-existent crowd control and no insurance and no ambulances bear some civil liability for the person that they killed?
Yes, it's true, but the challenge is going to be is what assets are they going to have to go after? So it really depends on, that's why I asked the other gentleman from K&K is were the traditional auto policy cover this intentional act? And I knew the answer was kind of probably more likely no, or at least they're going to try not to cover it because it's an intentional act. Auto insurance companies cover accidents. They don't really cover intentional acts. And when you're participating in intentional acts, such as street racer or takeovers, and something bad happens, somebody gets hurt, it's going to be a tough battle, but we'll give it a shot. There's always different angles. Maybe the person has assets. If they have assets and we can go after their assets, we'll do that. So, when in doubt, just give us a call. We could triage it and try to figure something out. And if nothing else, we would advocate for them throughout the criminal process system to help them navigate through that as well, because sometimes that could be a challenge in of itself, is navigating through the criminal justice system if you are a victim of a crime.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Russ. It sounds like you may have some help there, even in the form of just advocacy, if that's of any value to you. Thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I heard that. That was pretty good.
Good. Excellent.
Yeah, I just want to follow up with that real quick, if I could, Aaron.
And if anybody has any questions, I'll take the questions now because I do have to go. So just let me know.
Oh, okay.
Questions.
As Detective Castillo just said, it's the problem is that most of these people have a 1530 policy, and they're not going to have any assets. It's going to be real tough to get any money out of them. I'm a lawyer as well. That's my day job. So I understand your problem. That is a big problem, trying to get the assets.
Does anybody else have any questions for Detective Castillo before he has to run?
Ask if there's any liability for Dan. What happened?
I have a question. Is there any liability for my brother? He was attending an illegal street race. He was
for 20 years.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm not sure of all the facts or details about your brother's death, and I'm very sorry for your brother's death. But feel free to reach out to me offline, and we'd be more than happy to triage it for you. I did leave my email on the chat, so you could send me an email. But it's pretty much Detective Moses at dlawgroup.com. And our law firm is dlawgroup.com is our law firm.
Say thank you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, sir. Keep up the great work.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Is Officer Baldonado on with us? All right, good. If you would, introduce yourself and talk for about 5 minutes about anything you want to discuss relevant to this topic.
Awesome. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you for providing the forum in which to get a lot of different agencies involved. So I'm Officer Baldonado with the Highway Patrol. I am currently at our Glendale office, our division office, which oversees 10 area offices in all of LA County. And we've been fortunate enough to partner up with California Office of Traffic and Safety, and through the grant, we have a CARS grant, which acronym stands for Communities Against Racing and Sideshows. And this is actively the 3rd year. And I'm proud to say that through this grant, it provided the resources necessary to saturate all of LA County with our task force with over 120 specially trained officers teaming up with LAPD, LA County Sheriffs, and other agencies to combat this problematic, this epidemic. So we have a couple of epidemics going on. And we are not just saturating LA County. Now, this year in particular, we're also going towards San Diego County because the word on the street is that Highway Patrol doesn't play. We are hooking and booking. We're taking cars, we're arresting people, even spectators as well, if you can prove that they're to incite this. So, Mr. Patten, again, I condolences to you and your family. This will be, that just drives us even more, even our boots on the ground, to do what they're doing. So the grant has afforded us to send out additional personnel and targeting problematic areas. And through OTS, California OTS, that's provided to do that. So I think it's great to see, and I'm taking a lot of notes. I'm seeing a lot of entities here providing outlets. And I think that's what it is providing an outlet for our kids to be able to express themselves, driving fast cars. I'll take it as a recruitment opportunity. Hey, you want to drive fast? Drive the Highway Patrol. Do it legally. And you think venues like Irwindale, Buttonwillow, Fontana, San Diego, all these, there's a lot of venues in which a lot of outlets where teens can express themselves. And so, like Officer Jimenez had mentioned, we'll take the lighter approach. We have 2 different methods. We're going to educate you, or we're going to enforce. So we try to do the educational part of it and reach out to them, be on the positive side. Hey, you know what? Nice car. What do you have under? How long you been driving? Things like that, of that nature. We've gone to the LA Auto Show is another one. Fortunately it was postponed, but I think it's going to come up back in May. And that's another venue in which we can reach out and try to nip it in the bud, so to speak, and let them know that there are alternatives to race legally, safely. And, we're trying to tell them, they may glamorize it like the movie industry. If anyone's heard of Fast and the Furious, it glamorizes street racing, right? Yep. So I think they're coming on their 10th movie, but we want to let them know that it looks nice on the big screen, but that's not reality. The reality is talk to the Patten family, talk to the affected family members. We work with Ms. Trujillo, and she has an awesome story and a huge advocate. Hey, Lily. And, work with her and other agencies along with Matt as well. We're working with the DA closely, and we're teaching these teens that, even just doing donuts on our streets, on intersections, we'll charge you with a felony. We're not playing around. It's defamation of public property. So we're letting these teens know that it's costly, and not just taking your license, taking your car, and that's what we'll do. I remember back in the day, courts would authorize car crushing. Ontario PD was a big one. And there was a huge epidemic there, and the judge was relentless with a hammer, saying, we're going to crush your cars, and that's their livelihood. They put all the work and all their money into this vehicle, and then if you're caught with the street racing, if it dictates case by case, then we'll crush the car. But yes, I thank you for the forum again, Aaron. My contact information is there. Definitely reach out. I am definitely taking notes as well. So this will hopefully be a thread of continuous communication with all entities. Thank you again.
Good, thank you. Keep up the great work. Is Jennifer there with you, Russ, or is she signing on separately? Do you know?
She's busy with dinner and dogs.
Oh, okay. So we'll bypass Jennifer for now. Maybe later.
But I would like to make some comments. So.
Oh, please, sir. Yes.
I don't know about police enforcement. Has it changed? But in my town of Orange, California, there are so many violations every day. And sometimes there's a cop sitting right there when the car goes through the red light and nothing happens. And I remember growing up, if I had a tail light out or a license plate light out, I'm getting pulled over. But now, you know, I don't go through a light until all the cars are fit. You know, sometimes I count 3 cars going after I have a green, and people don't stop for stop signs. I'd like to see that right on red after stop eliminated, because people forget the after stop. And the red lights, you know, well, it just turned red so I can go. And there's all this like lawlessness, you know, like where I live, there's 2 main streets, Tustin Avenue, Chapman Avenue. Speed limit on both of them is 40. But if you don't go at least 60, you're going to get run over. And I admit that I don't go 40, but I don't go 60. You know, I might do 45. But, you know, again, like with this illegal street race in Carson, it's gone on every year. They know about it. I'm wondering, why isn't something done? You know, is it a lack of cops? People don't want to have a big police force, pay for police force, or they got better things to do than give out tickets for running red lights? That's my rant.
I'm not a cop. I have thoughts, but I'm not a cop. Do any of y'all want to respond to that?
Yeah, this is Officer Baldonado again. Yeah, that's definitely an issue. Again, with other agencies, I'm sure it's personnel too. We just don't have enough. You know, we wish we can put an officer on every corner, and there's, you know, so much that we can do. And we kind of have to prioritize our calls. You know, we'll get a call of, you know, let's say someone, you know, overturned vehicle on the freeway and party's trapped. So that's priority number 1. You got to make sure we get to those people that are injured. And I really wish we can have, you know, double, triple, quadruple our workforce. And that way we can combat every single item out there. But what I tell people too is that, you know, more eyes, be your eyes and ears. You see something, say something, call it in. If we receive multiple calls of a particular incident, that's going to take priority. If we have a unit nearby, and we work well with LAPD, LA County Sheriffs, all the small agencies, bigger agencies, it doesn't matter. So it's a collaborative effort. And especially with our council members and local legislatures. I've been to a lot of town council meetings, and they touch up on problematic areas. And so we'll go from one problem to another and just saturate it. You know, we have an intersection where people are running the stop signs, running the red lights. So we'll saturate it. You know, review patrol, that's what we're constantly doing. You know, that's why we have so many miles on our vehicles that we just run to the ground. But, you know, call it in, Mr. Patten, and to everyone else too as well, to the public, you know, just let them know that, you know, we are doing our due diligence. We're trying to, you know, we're working around the clock. You know, this job, this profession, even off duty, you know, I see something, it's like, oh my gosh, the cop mode goes on. You know, going home is when you see a lot of the violations. I'm sure every officer here can attest to that. But hopefully that provides some insight as far as, you know, we wish that we could be there for everything. It's just, you know, it's just a numbers game. There's so many other drivers versus law enforcement, and this particular climate as well. You have to be sensitive to that fact too. But, you know, regardless of the pandemic, we're going to be out there enforcing.
I think, and again, I'm not a cop, but my perception is that when people call and there are 300 people doing a takeover or something like that, and 2 cops don't come and attempt to arrest all 300 people single-handedly, that the people feel like, well, there's no point in calling because 2 cops aren't arresting 300 people. But my perception is, on the contrary, you would like them to call so that your bosses can see that it's a priority. If nobody's calling, your bosses don't order you to do anything about it because they don't believe it's an issue. Is there any truth to that perception?
Absolutely. It's that bystander effect, right? If you see something, oh, you know what, this other person's going to call it in. But what if that other person thinks the same way? Yeah. So exactly, right? So we want people to call. And with this day and age, everyone has a phone, unless it's a flip phone, not dating anyone, it has a camera, right? It has a camera. So everyone records. And these kids are, I mean, glad they're posting because it's evidence for, you know, we have a specialized task force, like I said, SRTF, and we will go through social media. We'll put up ghost accounts, and that's no secret. They know that, but they want to gloat. They want to say, hey, look what I'm doing, and they're doing selfies and getting hit. You know what? that's evidence for all our agencies just to stockpile. So yes, something, definitely report it. Don't feel that, like I said, and effect that, someone else will call it in. Well, what if they think the same way?
Yeah. And with regard to the, the Christmas Day tragedy, that was going on for quite some time on Facebook. I was watching it from the sidelines before your brother was killed. And I even saw his friends posting he was putting up videos, Merry Christmas from the street races. And his friends were actually posting, what are you doing there? Get out of there. This isn't your crowd. This is, kind of like discouraging him from being there prior to his death. I think, but again, I'm not a cop, and I certainly don't want to discuss anything that's sensitive to the ongoing investigation, which is nobody's jurisdiction or agency that's on this call right now anyhow. So, but I think the people who were posting this stuff and putting this stuff on Facebook, they didn't actually say where they were. I don't think they were announcing an address and inviting the cops to come to this address or anything like that. Does anybody know if that's correct? It could be up on Facebook for quite some time, but not actually know where it's happening.
Well,
can you still hear me?
It's been happening there in Carson and Torrance area for like 20 years on Christmas Day. It's a tradition.
Yes.
So my feeling was, why weren't they patrolling? Why have somebody call when they know this happens all the time? And apparently they were in, I think, 3 different locations. They started where my brother was, and then they went somewhere else, and then they came back, and my brother decided to take some more videos. He was due to come over our house for Christmas dinner, and he just, I guess, a couple more shots because he was in a bad area. Carson Sheriff said the car that hit him was doing 96 miles an hour. So, I can't believe that, there were other cars going down the other side of the street, while on one side of the street there were drag racing. So I'm just surprised that nobody made a call and nobody knew this was going on.
So if I may,
yes,
these organizers, when they do these takeovers, they're so coordinated that they have scouts. They have people monitoring our scanners to the point where our task force, we have to go to a third party and use, a certain frequency so that they won't hear our traffic. And they're constantly watching out. And they have scouts that are like blocks away from the center of the takeover. And I've seen it firsthand where we're a couple blocks away responding, and it's not even there by the time we get there. It's such a coordinated effort on their end. That's why we try to be one step ahead and try to corral everyone and stop these people. So that, not to speak to this particular case, but I know for a fact that if it's such a big event like that, they do have scouts, they do have people watching out, so they can give the people in the center, hey, guess what? Cops are coming. And everyone just disperses like cockroaches. And at that point, it's like, well, who do you catch? And that's why we rely on, we try to get the drivers, and then, at that point, we'll try to rely on social media posts and stuff for evidence. But yeah, it's such a coordinated effort on their end. That's why we try to be one step ahead on our end.
I wouldn't encourage vigilantism by any stretch. Even though what I've been doing for the last 20 years with the anti-street racing campaign, even though we offer that at neither cost to the police nor the taxpayers, I'm not a cop. I don't work for the cops. Despite that, I don't make a move without checking with the cops. I want to be a help to law enforcement, not a burden to law enforcement. I might, with my best intentions, think, well, I'm a pro driver. I'm going to do a pit maneuver on somebody in a high-speed chase without tagging up with the cops, and I might take out 10 cars on the freeway and create a bigger problem than the car that you were pursuing. So I'm extremely careful even though I'm a volunteer, an unpaid volunteer, I'm extremely careful not to make a move without tagging up with the cops. So I'm in no way a vigilante or anybody that would encourage vigilantism. But is there something that we haven't explored yet in any of these 5 meetings that is something like a volunteer, a bunch of civilian volunteers answerable to the cops, working in cooperation with the cops, that if they know this is a Christmas tradition that Russ is speaking of, you'd have so many volunteers everywhere in Carson. You said it's always in the same city or something. Yeah,
Carson.
So Carson, could we flood Carson with 100 volunteers just for Christmas Day only, with a little bit of increased law enforcement surveillance just to direct the activities of those 100 volunteers? Yes, sir, Rodrigo.
Yeah, so there's 2 very important numbers that people could be made aware of. Obviously, the 911, that's when the actual emergency is occurring, to report the street racing in a moment. There are different ways to stay anonymous. You could do it through a crime, because it is a crime, a tip line type of thing. We also have another service. It's 1-800-TAL-CHP, TELL-CHP. And if people are aware that they are going to be having these types of events in advance, they could call and tip us just by calling 1-800-TAL-CHP. That is our non-emergency phone number. And whoever answers the phone will send it to the appropriate CHP station or CHP area, because I know sometimes it could be confusing. People are contacting the Baldwin Park station for stuff that are happening, let's say, in Orange County. So if you just do 1-800-TAL-CHP, days in advance, if you already know, hey, they're organizing something, I want to stay anonymous, you could do that. They'll get that information out to us, and we'll keep a watchful eye.
And that's applicable even in Carson. CHP goes everywhere in California, presumably.
Exactly. So in Carson, it would be, I don't even know what area that would be. I think it's our South Los Angeles station. But 1-800-TAL-CHP is statewide. So you just dial that one number and they will send it to the appropriate area, whether it's CHP or one of our local agencies. We'll get that information out there.
Thank you for that. Is Mike Collins on the line? Okay. Is Daryl Scoggins on the line? Okay, Bob Beck, I know you're here. If you would briefly introduce yourself. Bob Beck is a motorsports legend for a long, long time. And most of y'all know him. If you would introduce yourself briefly and talk for about 5 minutes on anything that you want to discuss here.
I'm definitely not a legend, but I am part of the drag racing scene, the legitimate, and early on in my career, the illegitimate that we're talking about. Officer Rodrigo and I worked together a number of times at NHRA and Irwindale drag strip and Speedway, where I work. Hopefully when COVID lifts, we'll get back to racing action. And I'm definitely an anti-street race person. Early on in my teens, definitely street racing was part of it. We're not going to avoid or ever end street racing. We do know that the first street race was 2 people meeting on a path and they saw who could run faster. So it's not going to stop. We're going to continue on with that, but we've got to mitigate it, and we've got to educate and get people to change their attitude about it. Initially, drag racing, legitimatized drag racing through NHRA did start to curtail that, but it's become too limited now. And it's become too expensive in many cases. And there's also a mentality that we have to deal with. The cars aren't as safe as they need to be to run on an NHRA or a sanctioned drag strip. And I know the drag strip in Wilmington attempted to bring the street racers off the street into a safer place, but I was not part of that, so I'm not quite sure if they met the requirements for safety. The issues that I've come up against of late were that they did not and do not want to. So that is a problem that we have to deal with. And getting people to a legitimate drag strip to race, there aren't enough tracks, and the times are not necessarily convenient for those people that want to go to a track.
Thank you for that. One of the things that I would say about that is, there's a swagger factor where these people that aren't real race car drivers, and I'm totally unashamed of saying they're not real race car drivers, they feel like they have street cred. They swagger around looking all tough and stuff, and they kind of say, if it's not drag strip, standing start race, quote unquote race that's over in 5 or 10 seconds, it's not real racing. And if and when I get any of them to come to Auto Club Speedway and experience 150 miles an hour in bumper to bumper traffic that ranges from 125 to 200, everybody thinks they know how to drive for the first 5 minutes. We're in the humiliation business doing what I do at the racetrack on the road courses. And they realize very quickly they don't know how to drive. They also realize very quickly, this is really, really amazing. There is not a lot of adrenaline that one can experience, like coming into a turn together in a bumper-to-bumper pack of 50 cars that are going 125 to 200 miles an hour within inches of each other. A lot of the time, those people that think they don't want to do anything but drag race, and those people that think they don't want to race, they're hooked like a fish in 5 or 10 minutes of experiencing that rush at the track. But we get one person to come to the track for every 1,000 that should be coming to the track. So the effect of the drug that we're giving them once they get there is strong, and it generally leads to people not street racing anymore. But how to get that needle in the arm of 999 out of 1,000 of them, that's a little bit more mysterious. Maybe more recruiting in the courts. LAUSD sends us kids on the IEP system that are like on the autistic spectrum, because working on the race cars in a non-traditional setting has proved to be a really good environment for them. The ones that don't quite fit the mold as far as the educational system. But I have not worked hard to get LAUSD to send us kids outside of that IEP program. Maybe I need to expand that. But I don't know. Any thoughts that anybody has about our getting, way more than 1 out of 1,000 so they can come and experience it. And once they taste it, they don't usually go back to street racing.
And I agree with you, and I was part of that. That's what happened with me. I started racing legitimate road racing, just as you do, and that got me off the street. I became more interested in doing that than street racing. But again, we need venues and we need opportunities. An autocross is probably a much better and inexpensive way for a kid to get out there without worrying about hurting their car, injuring somebody, or crashing. On autocross is pylons, and we used to have them all over Southern California. And again, that's something we don't have any longer. They just run out. The situation that you talked about on Christmas morning, this was the situation where 2 guys ran out of talent before they ran out of horsepower. And they've got to learn how to drive. They don't know how to drive. They think they know how to drive. They can drive fast. They just don't know how to. And until we can get them in a track situation, whether it's a drag strip, an autocross, or a road course, they're not going to believe they don't have the qualifications. They don't have the skills.
Right.
That's something I don't know necessarily how to do it, other than to challenge them to do it.
Yep. I do.
And Irwindale would be a great place to set up a autocross as well. We used to run them in parking lots. We ran them at old Ontario Speedway when it was there, through their parking lot. Irvine Meadows, I think is what they call it now. It used to be Lion Country Safari. We would use that parking lot. We used Dodger Stadium parking lot. We set up autocrosses that were 1 mile in length for one lap.
That's a long autocross.
And it was fun. But that's where we got a lot of people off the street and stopped them. In my case, we weren't just running the drag strips, the drag racing on the streets. We were running Mulholland Drive. And legitimate racing, or autocrossing and racing, is what got me off the street. But it was an invitation by a racer to do that. And that's something we need to get out there. And I don't know, other than flyers and word of mouth, what we could do and where we could do it. Going out to Rosemond is just a bit of a drive for too many people. Irwindale has not attempted to set up a course for autocrossing, at least not with the current management.
Right. Now, I challenge that thinking a little bit respectfully. What you're saying is very representative of a lot of people, so I'm not disagreeing that what you're saying is representative of their sentiments. My challenge to them, not to you, is if you're not willing to drive a few hours to race, I question your commitment to motorsports. You know, if you want to ride big waves, you got to go to a certain place near Hawaii or something like that. That's a plane trip. If you want to ski, you're not going to do it on 405 in the middle of San Fernando Valley. You got to go to some mountains somewhere. Officer Jimenez.
Very, very briefly. I believe the biggest hurdle is not so much just giving them a place to race, right? What it really comes down to is the cost. It's not even so much the ability. You know, when I talk to some of these street racers, quote unquote, they like the opportunity because it just presents itself. But that's not even the biggest hurdle. The biggest hurdle is street racing, track racing, organized track racing is very pricey, or can get very pricey. And they're usually driving their parents' bucket, and they're trying to do all kinds of illegal modifications. And hey, this is what I got. I'm going to go out there and race it. They chop springs instead of getting nice springs. What you, Aaron, have done is you've given that excuse away from them. But that's only, for instance, mostly in the LA area. So I do several presentations at schools, and I talk about street racing and going to track. I always promote our tracks. And the question is like, well, how do I learn how to race, or how do I get started at racing? Well, that is the problem, is that we have the tracks, but they don't know how to even get started.
Right.
And with the program that you have presented with MotorGospel, you give them that opportunity. So it's easy. If we get this information out to the schools, they don't even have to search it. That information is coming to them.
Right.
Well, Officer Rodrigo, the autocrossing would be an ideal situation. It is considerably less expensive. You don't have to have a race car. You don't even have to pass the type of tech that Aaron's type of racing does. You can run a street car. The speeds are considerably lower, average speed about 15 miles an hour, but it is a course that teaches you how to handle a vehicle. And your competition is just like in drag racing, you're against the clock. You're not necessarily against the competitor alongside you. In the case of autocrossing, it's one car at a time. So it's a different situation. It is inexpensive. That's one of the reasons I got into it. It was very cheap. If I spent $25, $30 a weekend to race, then that was a big weekend. And I drove my car to the track, and we had a number of different facilities we used to set up tracks. SCCA, the Sports Car Club of America, was one of the sponsors of these types of racing. FCCA, the Four Cylinder Club of America. There was a local group called SICSIC, Southern California Council of Sports Car Clubs, that put them on as well. I don't know where they are now. I've not been involved in that for a number of years. I got into go-kart racing, so I started racing go-karts. That became more expensive than autocrossing, but there are venues out there, and it's not just the road courses like Fontana. There are autocrossing that can be done. We did it at Qualcomm. We did it at Santa Barbara City College. We did it at Antelope Valley College. There were so many places that you could do this. They're gone. We have to bring them back in a situation where the kids and the young adults or older adults can actually go someplace. And unfortunately, right now with the COVID situation, the drag racing is exorbitantly expensive. It's $100 a day to go racing, which just doesn't make it. So we've lost a lot of people in that respect. But the autocrossing would be a good opportunity. It's not straight line, so we got to get that mentality away from drag racing. But I think once, like Aaron's saying, once they get wheel to wheel, or they see what the car can actually do, turning left and right, they're hooked.
Can you all see my desktop here? Yeah. So this is a page off of MotorGospel's site called Where to Race. People say there's nowhere to race. This is pre-COVID. Maybe COVID has put a temporary dent in some of this. I'm not even sure that that's the case. And the people with the swagger factor that want to pretend they're race car drivers and place more credibility and street cred and how you look than whether you can actually drive. I always use the example of Vin Diesel as an actor. I'm a driver. Vin Diesel supposedly when he got the part for Dom Toretto in the first Fast and Furious, he was an actor in New York City or something like that without a driver's license. I don't know if that's urban legend or if it's really true, but the point stands. You can look real cool and swagger, but that's different than whether you can drive fast. And some that are fond of the swagger factor, that are putting up a front, or machismo or whatever, that don't really know how to drive, they're fond of saying there's nowhere to drive. And they're fond of saying if something isn't a drag strip to their liking, like at Terminal Island or something, there's nowhere to drive. And they're fond of saying if 5 different tracks are all at the same mailing address, that is only one venue. I would challenge that. Looking at my partial list of legal motorsports venues, at least pre-COVID, aka Where to Race off of motorgospel.org, looking at Willow Springs, we have the big track, we have drag racing there, we have the kart track, we have the speedway, we have Streets of Willow, Horse Thief Mile, and Bud Balcony. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different tracks at Willow Springs Racing Compound in Rosamond. And to my way of thinking, if you could have 6 events going on simultaneously, if you could have Porsches on the big track and motorcycles on the Streets of Willow and Chevys on the Speedway, and Japanese drift cars at Bud Balcony, and an Alfa Romeo Club on Horse Thief Mile. If you have 6 different races going on in the same weekend, that to me is not just one venue. So on that basis, I repeatedly tell people it's objective fact that there are greater than 23 legal motorsports venues spanning San Diego to Bakersfield, and here's the list. Show me anything on here that isn't true, and I'll scratch it off of here. That was pre-COVID. The San Diego Race Legal Group is a particular group, not a permanent facility, and I don't know how viable they are or not. Porsche Experience is real. One could go set up an autocross at San Diego at Qualcomm Stadium today, or whatever it's called today. I don't know if it's still called Qualcomm. At least pre-COVID, Irwindale had drag strip, donut box, speedway. I know that there is some drag racing going on there. There may not be grandstands full of people.
No.
Auto Club is still open, despite the rumors that they were going to close the big track. The big track is staying open, happily. We'll be racing there twice this season. And Auto Club is another one where you could have 6 or 8 events going on in the same weekend. This is objective fact. Anybody saying there's nowhere to race has to argue with this. Sorry, go ahead.
The problem is still the tech aspect and the cost. Camarillo Airport's gone. The airport commission has stopped the autocrossing there. That's been gone for over
I'll scratch that off the list. Thank you, sir.
The others are all viable. Famoso on a good day is open. They don't open on a regular basis for test and tune. Irwindale's test and tune is now $100, and you can have 4 crew people, and they're $25 a piece. That's a deterrent. They're only getting 50 cars on an average weekend.
Okay.
So that's the $100 cost. I know the guys on the street are putting up $100 per race, easy. But they're not going to. Yeah, well, easy. But they're just not going to put it down to run it at Irwindale because they won't pass tech. They don't have the proper equipment, and that's where their objection is going to be. Is we don't need that kind of safety equipment. It's just a street car, and they want to turn the clocks off so you can't see their time, because they make money on the street with their street races. Right. So they don't want someone to know how fast they are, and we run into a problem at Irwindale with that. It is an issue. You got a guy that runs a car 6 seconds in the 8th mile and has no safety equipment other than his factory shoulder harness and a DOT helmet, which isn't legal.
Right.
And that's what we're up against, unfortunately. Right. So yes, there are venues that we can go to, but getting a car past the tech and the expense of entering a regular facility like this is an issue.
Motor Gospel routinely sponsors on a case-by-case basis. We don't offer this to thousands of people. It's not an entitlement, but we routinely pay the expenses for our kids that come from the courts or their parents or the IEP program or whatever. If they show a serious commitment to motorsports and we think they are promising for not street racing anymore, they bear no expense. We cover all we sponsor, bottom line.
Okay.
Maybe that message isn't getting out there enough. Maybe I don't want that message to get out there much because maybe it's going to be taken advantage of by a bunch of hoodlums. But I think the unrepentant hardcore hoodlums probably don't want to have anything to do with me anyhow, and that's fine with me. I'm not trying to be a trusted insider to them. I'm not trying to be their friend. I'm trying to save some lives. Sometimes you can't save somebody's life and be their friend. It's a sad fact of the way some people carry themselves. But we can spread the word that on a case-by-case, you have to say case-by-case. Motor Gospel will pay somebody's racing expenses. We will sponsor, but they have to earn it. If we don't get the feeling that they're seriously committed, I'm not going to pay for some street racer trying to walk both sides of the street, trying to say he or she is about saving lives when he or she is out perpetrating illegal street races without crowd control, ambulances, or $2 million death dismemberment. I ain't going to put any money in that person's pocket. But if we see a serious commitment to motorsports and a serious willingness to stop doing it on the streets, even if they're on the fence, even if they're not quite sure, it sells itself. I zip tie you into my cage. I don't have a passenger seat. I duct tape you into my cage and take you around at almost 160 miles an hour in bumper to bumper traffic that's going 125 to 200 miles an hour. You ain't going to want a street race anymore. You're going to be so thrilled with it. It just happens that way. We will pay their expenses to give them a taste of that. We'll give them a free sample, I guess you could say. Maybe we need to get the message out there more that Motor Gospel Ministries will pay their racing expenses, but they have to earn it. So it's not an entitlement for everybody. And I scratched Camarillo off that list, but that still leaves, it's greater than 23. That's not even the whole list. Scratching Camarillo off the list, it's still easily 23. Maybe law enforcement officers need to be armed with that list somewhere. So that if somebody tells you there's no way to race, you can put that in their hand and go, tell me these aren't real. It's too expensive. Tell them we will sponsor on a case-by-case basis. That's a fact. That's not a campaign promise. I'm not running for office. I'm doing what I can, and I've been doing it for 20 years. I'm not jumping on a bandwagon or something like that. That said, there are going to be some real incorrigible. There are gang members that are racing that they wouldn't mind killing somebody in a drive-by shooting. So why should they care if they run over somebody? That's probably not our target audience. We're probably never going to reach them, and that's the way it is. But there's plenty we can do with the fence setters that don't realize how really, really cool it is to be doing 160 in a pack of cars at Fontana. Let's see. I asked for Mike Collins last call. Mike Collins. And Jennifer said she's not going to make it. She had something that precludes her getting on camera. Jennifer, if you're listening, you can get on without the camera showing you. But if you don't want to, that's all right too. Daryl Scoggins. I guess that's it for Daryl. Well, good. Other questions or comments?
I have a comment.
Yes.
I second that motion for autocrossing. I'm a former autocrosser, and before I moved to California, every weekend we're autocrossing, and there was always one guy that would beat me, and I went to this one event in Connecticut, and the first 3 runs he wasn't there, and I set some pretty good times. So all of a sudden, 1 run to go, he pulls in and he beats me. But the fun part about autocrossing, you're doing it by yourself, but some guys did have cars that came in on a trailer, and the fun part was beating those guys. I have my little Plymouth Arrow, and comes a guy with racing wheels, and I was in a stock class, but again, it's very inexpensive. Basically, you need a seatbelt and a helmet. You don't reach high speed, but one thing I learned early on, sometimes you have to slow down to go fast, because I thought one turn I was in 3rd gear and then my time was really, really bad. Next time I didn't get out a second, and I set a much better time and less wheel spin, and but when I moved to California, I didn't see much until I remember Lion Country Safari Cow Club always had events down there, but at the time I didn't have a car to participate. But I did this for a long time. My ex-wife too, and after she got tired of it, though, she said, "Why did you grow up?" I said, "What's the matter?" She's racing your car every Sunday. You're 30 some years old. Well, I'm 72 now, and I have a car that I could autocross. I got a Mustang GT, and to me, it's really inexpensive. I mean, a lot, like you said, those illegal street racers probably aren't going to be interested in that. But if you could get kids interested in that, you could take any 4-cylinder car, whatever, get a helmet. And a lot of times when these clubs have helmets you can borrow, you pay an entry fee and you get 3 or 4 runs. And it's a fun day. We used to go to airports, and I'm so old that before they were called autocrosses, they were called Gymkhanas. And in New York, stores were closed on Sunday because of blue laws. So for many years, when I was even a little kid, I'd go to my local shopping center on a Sunday and there'd be a Gymkhana. And then they got rid of those laws and the stores were open Sunday. Now there's no place to have a Gymkhana. So I was in a club that we had events every weekend. And what we also did is we rented out Pocono Raceway and Lime Rock Park. I'm thinking Pocono at the time, I think rented it out for like $3,000 for the day. And, we have a bunch of cars and, we ran the road course at Pocono as with Lime Rock. And it was fun. We always made money and, it was minimum cost really. And I had the most fun one day when my friend had a V12 Jag. And I didn't have a car with me that day. And he says, "You want to take a few laps at Lime Rock?" And I said, "Sure."
Wow.
My smile got real wide, So
right, I would imagine.
So that's an alternative for like kids. But these guys that do illegal street races, they're not going to want to autocross,
Yeah, we might be able to get them into it. This is the picture behind me now. It's one of the cars I autocrossed with, and I came from the street racing group, but I got into, I liked racing in general, and this is a different venue. It's a different skill set that you can show them and prove to them they don't know what they're doing very easily. We had SCCA or Cal Club came out and did driver schools every once in a while. There was a $10 fee plus your autocross entry to take a few lessons. I'll gladly do something like that. I've done that before, but we've got to get a location that is centralized. And I know, Aaron, you're saying if they don't want to commit to a 2-hour drive, they're not going to. But we had enough trouble getting people up to LA County Raceway when I worked there, and that was an hour outside of the San Fernando Valley. When Orange County shut down finally, when Lyons shut down, all of a sudden Irwindale or LA County Raceway became the place to go. And they did. But you're still not going to get people from LA going up to Bakersfield. And that's a 2-hour drive from LA. They're just not going there unless it's a major event with a lot of money payout. These guys aren't going to go there. Fontana's drag strip, as far as I know, is not reopening at this point. So we don't know what's happening with that. Irwindale has a limit of 100 cars. They've never even come close to it yet. And it's like I said, it's extremely expensive now. No spectators are permitted. The oval track has no spectators. Fontana's go-kart track is great. I love it. I've gone out there. I'd like to get back into it. But Russ, I'm almost your age, and I don't think I can do this anymore. But getting the kids out there in a go-kart is another exhilarating thing to do. Take them to MB2. Yeah, it gives them an idea, but they can crash and hit people, and that's not racing. So we got to teach them not to crash, not to come in contact.
Mhm.
And getting them out to something like that, it still would be a good starting point to get people interested and have a street racer night. Just call it a street racer night. Come on in. Here's your entry fee. We're going for trophies. There's a cash prize, whatever the case may be, and maybe get them in there. But I think you need to show them that they can't drive and show them on their own car,
Right.
especially in the situation like what happened on Christmas.
Right.
They didn't know what to do when they got got sent sideways.
Right. But if the organizers had appropriate crowd control in place, that would have been mitigated, and Dano would still be with us. I'm not excusing the drivers, but we crash and we don't run over innocent bystanders when we crash. Why is that? Because somebody engineered the situation with crowd control.
Well, it's not just crowd control. I worked SCCA crash and safety as well. And you're never on the outside of a turn. You're always on the inside of the turn. You're always got one person facing one way, one person facing the other way to watch it.
Right.
That's the things we learned by legitimate racing.
Right.
That's something that is sorely missing.
Yeah.
Early days when Big Willie was running the street racer group, I can remember a paramedic, a tow truck, and everything else showing up on a street racing night. That's not happening now.
Yeah.
And you've got a more belligerent group than what was around when Willie was there.
Yeah. LAPD Foothill, you had your hand up.
Yeah, good evening. Officer Villarosa, LAPD Foothill Division.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Aaron, for putting this on. Thank you, everybody who spoke tonight. I know we're talking about how we can make a difference, how we can do things, and just briefly, I think these forums, I mean, this is the first one I've attended, and I was taking notes during it, and there's plenty of resources out there. It's just connecting to them. And I think moving forward, if something comes up in our area, I know who to call or who to get in contact with to try to help us. So I think things like this will help us avoid tragedies like we talked about with Mr. Patten in his loss. And, I work with youth too, and during normal times with at-risk youth too. So knowing about your program and knowing where to put them, and especially these kids who want to try to get into these activities. So thank you for putting this on. And I think moving forward, like they say, knowledge is power. So I think these types of forums and these discussions really open the doors for all of us moving forward. Law enforcement, knowing who to contact, knowing who to liaison with other agencies. Unfortunately, a lot of these events are manpower intensive, and we can't do it by ourselves. So knowing who we can team up with is definitely a help. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the encouragement. Keep up the great work. Russ, I don't want to overcommit for me or for Bob or for anybody, but maybe we're thinking about something like a Dano Patten Memorial Autocross event in an appropriate location. And I'm not disagreeing, Bob, that if it's more centrally located, more people would be likely to come, even though I stand by my assertion that if you want to surf big waves, you got to go to Hawaii. It's if you're committed, you're committed. If you're not so committed, you're not so committed. But I agree with you that people who aren't quite as committed would be more likely to show up if we can find a parking lot or Dodger Stadium. They've done autocrosses at Dodger Stadium. Maybe this is evolving into an event in honor of Dano, an autocross at Dodger Stadium or something. Would you consider Dodger Stadium fairly centrally located?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a huge facility. We used to run in one of the northern lots, one of the smaller lots, and we could still get a good turnout of 100 to 200 cars. You got to set the hook to start with. And there's more to life than drag racing or straight line racing. And you know that, and I know that, but the kids don't necessarily. They don't think about that. They think they have to have a big NASCAR or a sports car to go racing, and it's just not the case.
Nope.
But we've got to set the hook. You've got to get them involved somehow. You've got to bring them out to it. The person that got me involved saw me up in Mulholland Drive and said, "Why don't you come out and try and do it for real?"
Yeah.
In a safe situation. And I said, "Oh, okay." And that's how I got started.
Yeah.
But it was a situation where we need to do something to promote that, to get that information out.
Yeah.
And it's going to take a concerted effort, a group.
All right. And I'm not volunteering to lead that. I'm open to the possibility of my leading something like that. I'm open to the possibility of my supporting something like that if somebody else wanted to take a leadership role. I can tell you it's much easier said than done organizing even a car show, let alone a race with insurance and tech and ambulances. And, you know, it's not a small endeavor. So nobody should attempt to lead something like that if they don't have some experience. But hence my not volunteering to lead that right now. But if there's interest in that, I'm open to that. And Russ, you know, give it some thought, talk to your niece if you want. I could be talked into leading it, or I would support it if somebody else appropriate would lead it.
Yeah.
It's not,
I wonder,
but it's very labor intensive and it's very risky financially in many, many ways. Sorry, go ahead, sir.
I'm wondering if Cal Club still holds any autocrosses.
I don't
Good
know.
question.
I've not been involved with it for about 20 years. My last involvement with SCCA or Cal Club, well, it wasn't even Cal Club, which just SCCA was when I lived in Texas and I was running there. We used to use the old, what became DFW Airport, and the other side of the street was the old airport, and we actually would run there on the old airport. Rialto had it at the airport there. There are a number of places we can do it if we can get the sponsorship, get a host club that has the insurance. That's an important part. And I can check into that. The club that I was part of that did it here in Southern California is still around, and they may have the insurance to do that and get their enthusiasm up to go back into doing it. So I can look into that. I will contact the club.
I'm Google, thank you, sir. I'm Googling as we're talking. And Bob, you won't be stealing my thunder. If you do it and I merely support your doing it, I'm happy with that.
I don't mind being part of it. How much of it I can do on my own, I don't know.
That's fair.
We'll put it out. Randy, my partner, Randy Cardoon from KNX Radio, we'll put it on our shows. We'll get the word out if it's something that we can put together. But again, at this point, we don't know what we can and cannot put together with the COVID situation. So that's a big if.
Yeah.
And I will contact Huddleston at Irwindale and see if he will allow us to do something like that on the Speedway. The parking lot's not conducive to it because it has gutters. But the Speedway itself could act as a small autocross track. It's been tried. I don't know what the objections were, but that was under the previous management.
And Motor Gospel ran an autocross at one of our race weekends at Auto Club Speedway. You know, while we're up on the big track doing triple-digit speeds and bumper-to-bumper traffic, we organized an autocross with the orange cones in the infield in one of the parking lots.
Okay.
Copious parking lots. Auto Club Speedway in the infield has huge amounts of space to do pretty much anything you want. And we even we called that like a car meet kind of thing with an outlaw feel to it, so they could come and party all night long. We didn't do any policing in the infield as long as nobody was getting shot or whatever. And it worked fine. Not a lot of people came, but it worked fine. But again, I'm not trying to be a trusted insider to the bad guys or the people that are trying to walk both sides of the street. So I wouldn't expect a lot of them to come to my party. I'm not trying to be their friend. I'm trying to save lives, like I said before. Yes, sir. You want to say something? Bob?
The issue with the autocrossing, though, is getting the drag racer mentality there. That's going to be the tough part.
Agreed.
Their cars are not set up for it. They're not set up for it, and they don't see the benefit of it because it's not the exhilaration from acceleration.
Yeah. Oh, on that subject, I forgot. We tried in the name of trying to appeal to the drag racer types. Our autocross was 2 drag strips and 2 U-turns. It was like a mini Martinsville. I don't know how many of y'all follow NASCAR, but not all half-mile tracks are graded equal. Martinsville is a half-mile track shaped like a paper clip. Bristol is a half-mile track shaped like a toilet bowl. So you have a very different car setup and a different driving skill set and a different mindset when you're racing for 3 hours on 2 drag strips connected by 2 U-turns, total steering wheel lock U-turns, versus racing around a half-mile toilet bowl like Bristol. And we made a little mini Martinsville out of orange cones. So we had that big orange gasser, Fat Bastard, I think it was called. You probably know it's kind of a
Don. It's Don and Henderson.
Yeah. And so they actually raced, quote unquote, raced that gasser around this 2 drag strips with 2 U-turns. And it was the fastest thing there in the straights and the slowest thing there in the turns, as you might imagine. So it was fun. Any other questions before I guess we're calling it a night. Oh, wait, no, I have a statement from the officers that are investigating Dano's death. Obviously, they were not cleared to come on and talk about it, and we're not allowed to talk about anything, but they gave me a statement that I was allowed to read, basically verbatim, and that is just that it's a very active investigation, and they're getting tips almost daily, sharing information, videos, and screenshots. That much I was permitted to say, which probably isn't telling you anything you don't already know, but for whatever it's worth, they did sort of weigh in to the extent that they could.
Yeah, we check in with them every couple of days. Every couple of days we talk to them, and Detective Lindman, and basically the last time we talked to him, he said they had 2 warrants. They were waiting to get 2 more warrants, and apparently the guy that owned the Cadillac said it was stolen. But how do you steal a car with racing slicks? You know, you go. It's funny. Like I'm gonna steal a car, but I need one with racing slicks. Oh, look at this. You know, so you know they're still working on it. And the driver of the GTO fled to Mexico, and if the detective knew some of the information that he found out later that day, they probably would have arrested him. They wouldn't let him go. And apparently Border Patrol's been told to watch out for this guy. So the other guy, they have an actual picture of him, current picture, and they were looking for a video or a still picture of him getting into or out of the car. And last we talked to them, they're still trying to find that picture. So.
Well, if there are no other questions, we'll call it a night. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining this. Thank you for the feedback that this forum is valuable. I never know whether, I'm real excited about this situation. There seems to be a hole in society shaped like me, to do something about this. But I never know whether everybody else is excited about it as I am. So I'm glad that you found the forum useful, and I'm open to doing more of these. Maybe just this kind of thing is valuable in terms of getting the word out there. I know what I know, but I forget that not everybody else knows it. So maybe just more of this type of awareness thing is really important. Keep up the great work. Together we may save a life, and we'll talk to you all real soon. Thank you so much.